We've looked now at all of our warp threads, grammar, phonics, penmanship, and spelling, and we've seen how reading and literature grow out of phonics. Now let's take a look at our other woof threads, the ones that provide the filling in our linguistic weaving. Composition is the act of combining parts or elements to make a whole. Like phonics provides the building blocks of reading, grammar provides the building blocks of composition or writing, and it ultimately gives us the strength of structure to yield beautiful collections of words that convey thoughts and ideas and emotions. But grammar is just a starting place. How thoughts and ideas are combined and organized is another part of writing. And of course, also important are the stylistic elements that make it enjoyable to read, or the clarity to follow the author's thoughts, or the involvement to care about what's been written. There is a sequence to producing good writing: composing sentences, then paragraphs, then stories and essays and papers. Children need to understand the parts in order to put the whole thing together properly. But they also need experience with good examples and practice with the process. A similar sequence of skills leads to effective speech. Just like in composing an essay or report or a story, speech takes the same building blocks and adds in the elements of appeal to auditory learners: voice quality, drama, theatrics. I won't spend a lot of time on this one, but I do want to note that public speaking is the #1 fear of Americans. There are very few people who really enjoy speaking in front of a large group of people. Teach your children to overcome this fear, and they will be a step ahead of many adults. Earlier, I compared vocabulary to a golden thread that worked through the weaving. In composition, the expert use of vocabulary makes our writing more interesting and specific. When speaking, we might find our intelligence being judged by the extent of our vocabulary. Expanded vocabulary also increases a student's ability to do well on standardized testing. Strong scores on college entrance tests like ACT, SAT, and even the GRE are largely dependent on vocabulary. Many reading and literature programs include vocabulary studies, but there are standalone vocab programs as well. These programs might be subject-based, like IEW's Advanced Spelling and Vocabulary, or they might be general usage-based, like Wordly Wise 3000, or they might be roots-based, like Word Roots or Vocabulary from Classical Roots. About now, you might be wondering how we ever got from reading and writing to the myriad of programs that have something or other to do with language arts. You might also be thinking, okay, so now I know a little bit about each of these components, but I still don't have a good idea of what I should choose. Fair enough. So how do you choose? Do you pick the one or ones your friend is using? Do you pick up something at a used curriculum fair? Do you check online reviews and see what everybody else likes? Or do you call Rainbow and ask what are our top sellers? If you haven't already watched our Choosing Curriculum the Family Way workshop, I'd encourage you to take a look at it and to consider the family questions posed there. These are the things that are important to consider as you choose curriculum, and some of them might matter more to you than others do. First, is this a faith-based product? The F in our family acronym is for faith. 2, what is the predominant homeschooling approach of this product? The A is for approach. 3, how much money does it cost? Is it a good value? Does it fit in our budget? Is there a less expensive way to accomplish the same thing? M is for money. 4, how will the individuals in my family with their distinctive learning styles respond to this program? I is for individual. 5, how will it work with the other aspects of my life? L is for life. And 6, does the program give me what I need to teach this subject? Y is for you. Any one of these questions might be the most important one for you, but in terms of language arts curriculum, I tend to think that it is the teaching approach that makes the most difference. Educators have been discussing, arguing actually, for years over the role of grammar, or the need for diagramming, or when to start teaching grammar, or whether to emphasize free writing without corrections, or formula writing, or learning from models. Frankly, you're not likely to solve any of these dilemmas, but you do need to have some idea of what you think is important, and you need to choose a curriculum that is consistent with your thoughts. Most of our language arts curriculum choices fall into 3 different camps. traditional, Charlotte Mason, or classical. And of course, there are variations and blendings of these as well. Traditional is what you probably had when you were in school. There is a teacher edition and student text or workbook. A lesson is taught by the teacher, the student follows along, and then there's an assignment to reinforce the concept, followed by tests to make sure you learned what you were supposed to learn. Traditional courses tend to introduce grammar, usage, and mechanics in the early elementary years, hit them pretty hard with depth and determination in the middle school years, and expect proficiency at the high school level. Composition is handled in much the same way, usually in alternating chapters or sections of the text, and with systematic instruction. In other words, first sentences, then paragraphs, then stories and essays. Traditional publishers are also likely to have a grammar and writing text and a reading and literature text, and then perhaps separate programs for spelling, penmanship, and vocabulary. Publishers that fall into the traditional category are Bob Jones, Saxon, Holt, Prentice Hall, but there are variations that would technically qualify as traditional, but don't seem much like the ones above. Easy Grammar, for instance. There are also a myriad of products that target a specific skill or skills, like Foursquare Writing Method or the Adolescent Literacy Series. And these provide instruction and practice of that particular skill. These supplementary workbook types of material tend to fall into the traditional camp in terms of what is covered when. The term Charlotte Mason refers to a person, a 19th century educator, and then to her method of education that's become popular with homeschoolers. Children are taught as whole persons through a wide range of interesting living books, first-hand experiences, and good habits. According to Ambleside Online, which is an online expert for all things Charlotte Mason, language arts is to be taught incorporating techniques such as copywork for practice in physically forming the letters, narration as a method of composing thoughts, and lastly, through written narrations, the process of transferring those thoughts to paper. Charlotte Mason advocates also have distinctive thoughts about grammar. They believe there's only a small body of facts to be learned, and they can be learned when a child is older, in other words, not in the early primary grades, and that they will be mostly learned, mostly picked up if the children are continually reading good books. Moms are encouraged to trust the process. Charlotte Mason type language arts programs include the Queen Homeschool Language Lessons, primary and intermediate language lessons, English for the Thoughtful Child, and Simply Grammar. These programs tend to be teacher-student interactive, they encourage memorization and copywork, and they often include picture studies. There is also an amazing number of copywork options available, as spiral-bound books such as Copywork for Boys and Copywork for Girls, as picture studies such as Pictures in Cursive, and as CD-ROMs of PDF files such as Presidential Penmanship or the Canterbury Tales Copywork Notebook. Copywork is a method that can be used effectively across the curriculum, and often is, for math, spelling, history, not to mention Bible and theology. Classical methodology teaches children at 3 different stages: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. In the grammar stage, grades 1 through 4, the foundation is being laid for all future education, and the focus is on learning the rules of a subject. The logic stage is grades 5 through 8, when a child begins to think more abstractly and make logical connections in academics. The rhetoric stage is grades 9 through 12, when students apply what they've learned in previous levels to draw their own conclusions and express themselves clearly. According to Susan Weiss Bauer, author of The Well-Trained Mind, a classical education then has 2 important aspects. It is language-focused, and it follows a specific 3-part pattern. The mind must be first supplied with facts and images, then given the logical tools for the organization of those facts, and finally equipped to express conclusions. The programs that she has authored and published, First Language Lessons, Writing with Ease, and the new middle school level, Writing with Skill, all follow this pattern. However, some of her methodology is similar to the Charlotte Mason approach because she uses copywork and dictation and narration. The difference would be an early emphasis on learning the basic structure of our language. In other words, grammar. Another classical program, Shirley English, teaches grammar and sentence structure through jingles, and it relies on a type of oral sentence parsing, which is an old-fashioned term for going through all the parts of a sentence. Is it easier now to see why language arts can be so confusing within homeschooling circles? There are distinctive differences in these methodologies, and those differences are reflected in the programs each produces. Now, some of the dilemmas of choosing language arts curriculum may make more sense to you. For instance, diagramming. As you might expect, classical tends to diagram, and Charlotte Mason tends not to diagram, and traditional is caught somewhere in the middle. Diagramming isn't taught in most classrooms today, and even authors of grammar programs disagree about its importance. However, some major textbook publishers include a section on diagramming in the back of the text, like Prentice Hall Writing and Grammar Series, while others, like Saxon and Bob Jones, proudly include it in the general instruction. Diagramming is done with the intention of better helping students understand sentence structure. You might think of it as a graphic organizer. Other methods, though, are available, such as color coding, which Winston Grammar uses, or even just underlining and labeling, like Easy Grammar uses. Whether or not you choose diagramming is up to you. The important thing is that your student is able to build effective sentences and to communicate with clarity. Students who are visual or auditory learners tend to flourish in language arts, perhaps because of its very nature. If you have a kinesthetic learner, you might want to consider a program like Winston Grammar that uses a hands-on and color-coded methodology in order to teach the parts of speech and the parts of sentences. These students also might do better with an unconventional approach like the You've Been Sentenced game. We've taken some time now to look at what sorts of things are needed to prepare our children to explore the world of literature, to express themselves succinctly and beautifully, to communicate carefully and fluently. So we should be ready to start putting it all together and making some final curriculum choices.